Assalamu alaikum. Today we're here on the first episode of the Nixer edition Sharks on Air. I am your host Aayan Khurram.
And I am Hammad, your co-host.
And the person whom we're here with today, I do not think needs any introduction. We are here with the Dean of Nixor College, Sir Nadeem.
Sir Nadeem, I want to start this off by asking कि कितने अरसे बाद कोई स्टूडेंट आपका इंटरव्यू कर रहा है या you are having a podcast तो खैर हमने आपकी देखी थी अभी बीच में.
That was by Nixer teacher.
Yeah, Sir Shakib Wali.
Also a parent of a student both at Nixer O levels and Civitas. A student podcast in this formal setting. I can't remember the last time that happened.
So
I'm sure it has. It's been a few years.
Been a while.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll start off with the first question. So if you could reflect back on your journey, you've done so much. Nixer has been an establishment for so long. So what are some of the key learnings that have really stuck with you? And if you could go back in time and tell your younger self something, you could give him a piece of advice, so what would that be?
The first part of your question, reflecting on the journey, you mentioned Nixer is a successful undertaking. I think you've got to define success.
Right.
All right. And very clearly, I recall, I think it must have been maybe 3 years after Nixer had opened its doors to students. That happened in 2008. 2-3 years later, a friend of mine who I went to school with, A levels and O levels with, was in the reception area, and back then we didn't have electronic processing of applications, even though the online part of the application was done. But as soon as the results were published, there would be hundreds, perhaps even more than 1,000 students, their families would come in and process their applications. And in the defense campus, that place was called Grand Central. Everybody would congregate there. And my friend, I recognized him, invited him into my office, and he said, "Look, it's amazing. You must be really happy and proud of how successful Nixer has become in such a short period." And honestly, it didn't take me time to reflect on what I wanted to say. It was just sort of a gut response and that's my response to you today as well, which is, it depends on what you call success, right?
Right.
And if success is measured by the number of applicants or the number of enrolled students, then I think we would have hit success pretty early on.
Right.
But if you are genuine and true to the vision that you started with, the mission that you started with, back in 2011, I think Nixer was still mocked by institutions that had existed for decades and much more before us.
Right.
We weren't a serious entrant, and the students who were coming to Nixer were coming against advice that they would get from a lot of teachers, against advice from parents, because parents saw that as a gamble, right? But students were still coming. And if our vision says that Nixer's vision is to change expectations that Pakistan has from leading institutions, if we had changed expectations, I think a lot of parents would be insisting their kids come to Nixer. A lot of schools would sort of emulate Nixer. That wasn't happening then. All that was happening then is saying, देखें, अब ECA एक time ज़ाया कर रहे हैं बच्चों का, आप इनको distract कर रहे हैं. Even teachers weren't convinced. Very early on, Nixer had a student government president that was a straight up B grade kid. And I remember discussions in the staff room that how could a B grader represent the entire Nixer student body? So we had challenged a lot of things that seemed counterintuitive to people, right? And as far as the B grader is concerned, our position was that, look, if you want someone to lead Nixer from the perspective of academic excellence, then your TA captain would be that person. If you wanted an amazing athlete, you could pick the student who leads sports
The SEC
or a
teacher.
debater.
Yeah.
But if you want someone who genuinely, they'll say, commits to service to community, this kid with a string of B's, that's the kid. Right now, if he was disinterested in Padhai and didn't commit the kind of time that we feel is reasonable to commit to academics, then I would say that's not someone who represents Nixor values. But this kid did all of the things that I feel represents what a leader of a community should do. And it was unthinkable at that time that someone who doesn't have A grades would be that person. So success to us waqt nahi tha. If vision was to change expectations, expectations were what they were 100 years ago, 50 years
Right.
ago.
So
But now, let's look at it now. There are a lot of schools that, A-level schools that existed back then but don't exist now. If you look at any school that comes up, whether it's in Karachi or Lahore and Islamabad, I think a lot of them talk about the Nixer model, right? I think it is not okay to offer a program that says, okay, this is how much we do in school, baki ab tuitions pe kar lein. It's not okay. There's schools now finally have started a summer program, which every school should start a summer program. Students don't need 2.5 months to recharge their batteries. I think 2.5 days is enough.
Yes.
And expectations have genuinely changed. So at this point, I feel there is some reason to feel that the approach Nixer has taken is successful, but certainly not back then. And it's not successful because X number of students, and it's not successful because of X number of grades. I feel if there's any claim that Nixer can put on success, it's because the expectations have genuinely changed.
Right. Though from that time and compared to now, would there be something that you would have done differently with Nixer?
Yeah. Look, I think over time, one tends to learn to balance things better, right? Yeah. It's fair to say that in the early days of Nixer, the concept of well-being forget not being there. I just thought that was weakness to think about mental health. I feel differently now. I feel there are times when I might have pushed a lot harder than I would right now. I think I'm more, I think Nixer, and I say I'm talking about the Nixer culture, it's kinder, it's gentler, it's a little more accepting of human needs.
Right.
When it started, even for parents, if parents were late by a minute, I wouldn't let them enter into a parent workshop, and I wouldn't do that right now, because I feel there's an element of humility. My job isn't to educate parents. My job is to help students become the best version of themselves, and there I feel every second should be treated with respect, right? But if I had to do it over again, I think I'd back then have been more patient, less reactionary, right? There were times I've lost my patience in an assembly with 800 kids sitting there, and I've smashed a mic to bits because I was unhappy about something as a community that we didn't stand up for. So my reason for being annoyed was I would still be annoyed, but I think I would express it differently.
But I
there
think
are changes.
ये जो patience वाला element है, the one you talked about, इसकी tendency with age या with time ही पैदा होती है. You cannot force yourself कि you become patient और आप के अंदर वो सब्र और वो तहम्मुल आ जाए. Especially in your teenage या 20s में, even in 30s. It's I believe, I think Aayan भी agree करेगा कि it's impossible कि आप वो tendency अपने अंदर पैदा कर सकें.
I agree. It comes with time. It also comes with humbling experiences. Time teaches you that control is an illusion. Influence, yes, you have. And I'm glad. Like, if you ask advice from someone who's in their 20s versus someone who's in their 40s or 60s, 80s, different आपको मिलेंगे, and someone who's in their very sort of senior people, very tenured, their advice is just synthesized into the most basic building blocks of life. Right? But someone who's in their 30s, when you feel quite infallible, is very different. It's red hot blood and that passion, and I love that energy. Honestly, if someone asks me what's the best part of the opportunity that I have every day, it's to work with people who are idealistic, right? They don't. Sometimes people my age do too much analysis, and when you analyze everything so much, you learn to calculate risks too accurately. An example of that is the GBR project, the Gilbert project, right? 2014, we took that on, and any sane community wouldn't take that on.
Exactly.
Right? We'd never done this kind of work. We'd never been as a community to that area. I had no background in construction. Us waqt Shia Sunni ke bhi, there was strife going on there. And every grown-up I spoke to said, you're just insane. Don't even consider it. Forget plan it. And every student that I spoke to, it was generally the same thing. Sir, just let's go. Forget, puche bhi nahi, just chalte hain. And it's that willingness to not even see obstacles, even if they're there, makes things happen, right? And that's why I love being part of education at this age, and even for the little ones, for Civitas. It is pure what they say to you, right? A little kid, he was, I think, in class 2, assemblyman. So I ask a lot of questions, kids raise their hands, and I call on somebody. Only then can they answer. And after assembly, one of the kids was telling me, Sir, Hamdan called you stupid. I was like, Hamdan? Dude, that hurts my feelings. Why did you call me stupid? तो वो पहले तो आँख नहीं मार रहा था मुझसे, ऐसे नीचे देख रहा था. And then finally he said, Sir, I had my hand raised the entire assembly, and you didn't call on me even once. So if you think about it, and I greet these little kids as, hey bud, hey pal, तो वो दिल से सोच रहा है that this old man is my pal. And when his pal didn't call on him, उसके दिल से निकला कि Sir Nadeem is stupid. But दिल तोड़ा किसका पहले? मैंने तोड़ा ना उस बच्चे का. So that purity of feedback that you get from kids, and that complete idealistic vision of what's possible from grown-ups like you guys, that's the part of my job that I truly love, and the opportunity that I'm very grateful for.
Right. So when in 2014 you thought of going to GBR, so when people told you कि नहीं हो पाएगा, it won't be possible, what was the thing that kept you going, and you were like, no, we have to do this, we will do this, and there's no way that we're backing out of this, and how?
So I think every strength has a corresponding weakness. It depends on finding the right balance.
Right.
If you're committed to something, you might be called stubborn. The other positive light in which you can view this same trait is being tenacious. Right? At some point, tenacity crosses over into stubbornness. Wise people know when to be tenacious and when not to be stubborn. Right? Just naturally I'm wired that way. I need data, I need evidence, I need support. Until then, I feel it's possible. Right? And with time, you become wiser and say, maybe it's not that possible, but उस वक्त I wasn't that wise. And I felt, यार क्यों नहीं हो सकता? पत्थर उठा लेंगे. कम उस वक्त रमज़ान भी थी, by the way. रात को काम कर लेंगे.
Okay.
So there was never data that was brought forward that said कि ये नहीं हो सकता. Experience might tell you ये नहीं हो सकता. The data wasn't supporting that. So with time, I think I lean more on experience. But back then, I didn't have the data to say we'll pull the plug on it, and there was willing, able, the mission of Nixer, ready, willing, and able to make an impact. There were 30 plus kids who were there. So off we went.
So do you think that as a leader, or should a leader be tenacious, and what other values should a leader have he takes his team with him and his team actually is able to succeed?
Traits of, look, there are so many, but I think one is there are certain battles you fight knowing that you lose those battles. But it's the fight, right? I mean, we fought against tuitions, we fought against getting into Nixer because upar se koi aaya, right? We fought that. Sometimes, why don't we get it? It took us a long time to get a bigger campus. It's fighting those fights that don't make the road ahead easy. I think part of leadership is to just get out there and take a few punches, right? And that can only happen if you truly believe in something. Both my kids came to Nixer. I didn't force them. It was my dil se khwahish that they would come here. And both of them joined Nixer O-levels. जब छोटे थे तब Nixer O-level civitas का concept नहीं था. But when they got an opportunity, they initially didn't take it up. But I didn't want to use them to prove a point, right? I wanted them to come to that conclusion themselves. And they did in O-levels. But my son's ID was 2020001. He was the first enrolled kid in his class at Nixer. It was important for me to do that. And my daughter was 2021001. She was the first enrolled student. And it was a matter of pride for me that my kids were part of Nixer. And how it connects to leadership is you've got to believe in what you do. And if it's not good enough for your own kids, you don't truly believe in it, right? My belief didn't have to translate to my kids, they chose it. But if I thought that they were making the wrong decision, I would have stopped them. Right? So from a leadership perspective, do what you really are convinced about, that is aligned with your values. I think not being good to people just because you need them, right? I think that's a very big part of it. I think you gotta know that हमेशा जो आप लोन देंगे वो पैसे वापस नहीं आएंगे. Sometimes you'll get cheated, and that has happened. And I think you've got to not tar everybody with that same brush with one bad experience. You've got to continue to believe in humanity and in the goodness of people. You got to respect them. You got to give them credit. You got to be willing to work hard and lead by example. So there are lots of things. I don't think there's any one specific thing. But being honest about what you're trying to do.
Something that you would see in a student and be like, he'd be a good leader. Like you could give an example of the child who became president who was a B grader, right? What was something you saw in him or a spark in him that you were like, this kid would be a good leader, he is a good leader?
You know, the first step is, and whenever students graduate, they bring their uniform or something, a book that they want their teachers to sign, and when they ask me for that, I always write BGWH, be good, work hard.
You wrote that on
my journey. Yeah, you got to be willing to work super hard, right? Mondays don't look different from Sundays and Saturdays, so calm head. But that kid I don't specifically remember, but generally I feel niyat matters, right? Work for the right reasons, work with the intention of making a positive impact, work selflessly. It doesn't mean you never think about yourself, but if you only think about yourself, that's a masla. So people who are willing to work hard, people who are willing to be good, have good niyat for the world around them, I think that's something that I would look for in students.
So it's the effort, basically.
The effort matters, right? And in education, we have the luxury of separating effort from achievement. The world is not so generous.
Right.
Right? A lot of, as a CEO, it doesn't matter what your effort is, aapki stock price kya hai, right? But here we have the luxury of separating the two, and there's no need to just judge students by one yardstick. If A star hai to aap amazing hai, A star nahi hai to you're not worth my time. I feel that education should never do that. And there are so many people, hamara reunion hua tha from students who graduated in 2010. And so many of them have done so well But what they had in common was the things that I just talked about in terms of being willing to work hard, being good people. Not the grades that they had either coming into Nixer or graduating from Nixer. So many introduced themselves. I don't know how I got into Nixer. I thought with my grades I would have never gotten in. I'm not sure how they got in, but they did get in. And even when they graduated from Nixer, some had fantastic grades, some didn't. But the guys the students who were out there, talking about their journey, and so many of them were successful beyond their years. Grades was not what they had in common. Right? Okay. So achievement, even dunyavi, at the end of the day, achievement ultimately comes. But schoolon mein, because there isn't anything else that can be quantified. Yeah. और स्कूलें भी आपस में unfortunately मुकाबला करती रहती हैं कि भाई हमारे इतने stars आए, इतने trophies हमने जीती. So we get too micro-focused on quantifiable achievement rather than on mehnat and niyat and
the basic
things like that. Yeah.
Where it stems out of, yeah.
All right, so like moving on, the audience, and obviously we would want to know that Nixor was established in 2008, if I'm not wrong. So before that, what was Sir Nadeem doing, and Nixor ka idea kahan se aaya, and how this college came into being, and ye community jo hai, it's more like a movement. Yeah. How this got established.
So I came back to Pakistan in 2007, and it wasn't to start Nixor. Nixor was already in motion, set in motion by Sir Nasser.
Oh, so Sir Nasser started.
Sir Nasser started Nixor. Okay. I joined the Nixor family in roughly Jan of 2008.
And Nixor had been established.
No, Nixor was in the thought of Nixor had been established, and the initial team was in place, like Sir Naushad, Mrs. Faruqi, Sir Imran, and there are several other teachers that were part of it at that time. I had actually come to Pakistan to do something. This is, I don't know how much time you have, but it wasn't to come back into education. But I had been in the US since the late 80s, and for the first few years, I don't think I even missed Pakistan. There's a certain resentment I have that identity I started to miss later on. And something as simple as, let's say financially you're doing well and you have a big house, but if your parents feel like, yeah, I don't want to stay in this country, I'll come visit you for 3 weeks, but in a week they want to go home. And you start to think, yeah, what is all this about? If I can't share this with my mother, my father, my family, and more, my identity was something that I started to really think about. And at one point I told the president of the company that I was working with, and at that time I was working in Belgium, that look, I can't do this anymore, I've got to go home. I'm sorry, but it's just, I'm not happy here. And it wasn't because I didn't have money. Alhamdulillah, that was set. I had a house that was bigger than Nixer. But he said that, look, don't just quit. They were trying to set up their Asian headquarters in India. And he said, we haven't finalized that, so if you're going to Pakistan, see if we can set it up in Pakistan. Okay. And this was a specialty textile, specialty chemicals company. So I came back to set that up. But Pakistan was in turmoil in 2007, late 2007, December, Benazir was assassinated. Yeah. And it was, the company decided that they weren't going to invest assets in Pakistan. And I had a choice. I could go back to Belgium, I could go back to the US, I could go to Singapore where their Asia Pacific headquarters were, or I could start this thing in India, in Pune. And none of those 4 options were what I wanted. My 5th option was
to stay here. And
at that time, Sir Nasser was like, dude, join us. And I was very happy to do that. Until then, for the first 6 months, I was just kind of ad hoc giving opinions. But in Jan, I formally became part of Nixer.
As a dean?
Not initially. हम एक coffee shop में बैठे हुए थे. Initially, we thought Mrs. Faruqi should be the dean.
Oh.
And so we were all like, Ms. Faruqi, you should do this. I was going to teach. accounts, economics, because I have that background. And Ms. Farooqi said, "Nahi Mia, mujhe deen shin nahi banna." So then it was me.
All right.
Yeah.
And 2008 से लेके 2025 है, it's been like 16-17 years. It's been a great time, but अब जो हमने एक recent change देखा, the campus shift. Because हम उस वक्त AS में थे and we only had spent like 5-6 months in that campus और हम इतना attach हो गए थे. We had an emotional connection, and you had spent 16 years in that building, in the same building, days and nights, multiple achievements, countless achievements, I would say. तो आपका तो एक अलग ही connection होगा उस campus के साथ, एक emotional एक वो होगा. तो when you were making this decision of shutting that campus down and making a new campus, तो कोई second thoughts आए या एक like final day था आपका DHA campus का? What was your feeling? What were your emotions?
You know, I was surprised myself that I wasn't emotional. I thought I would be, but I wasn't at all. And generally, I mean, there are times that even sort of a sappy television ad might bring a tear, but I wasn't emotional about that. And as I look back at it, it became clear to me. Even in the moment, it was clear to me. But I feel the reason I wasn't is I was later able to put an analogy around it, that if you think of a baby growing up, people have talked about Nixer as being, for the founding team, our baby. But Nixer, not the building. The building is sort of the cradle, right? The baby is the culture and the vision, the mission, if it's a true commitment. And we weren't leaving that behind. We weren't leaving the culture of Nixer behind. In fact, if I see a contribution that I've made with the help of administrators and teachers, it's not having built all the decks and added a room here, some utilize the campus differently there. It's a culture we've created. When we describe Nixer to people who haven't been through the Nixer journey, they don't believe it.
They don't believe it.
उनको लगता है कि ये बस बता रहे, हम बोल रहे हैं, ऐसी बातें कर रहे हैं. And there are countless times when they interact with students of Nixer, alums of Nixer, and they listen to what we actually do from me, from other administrators, they are in awe, right? And it's the culture. And that's why I didn't feel that we were losing out. We moved from a cradle, to something a little bit bigger. And even here, I mean, the campus is better. But imagine if our culture somehow gets compromised or we get complacent. I hope that would make me cry. But not the fact that we left a building behind. At the end of the day, I mean, and I have no basis to give any religious advice or guidance, but what's a masjid, right? It's what it represents. It's what happens inside in terms of commitment to something much larger. So outside of that, it's a building. Right? What makes it amazing and special is what it represents, what it stands for, and what commitments are made in that connection that happens inside the masjid between us and the Creator. Right?
So, sorry to cut you off.
Yes.
So, you talked about the Nixer experience, right? If you tell someone outside of Nixer, they don't know कि ये क्या है. RAF Regatta is something that I think all of us have done. RAF Regatta, you've been to many regattas as well. So what was going through your mind when you were thinking of developing RAF Regatta? Because when we explain it to someone in another college or a school, they're like, you guys are on the beach building rafts. What's the point of that? How's that linked to a college? So what was going through your mind and your team's mind when you were thinking of setting up RAF Regatta?
Look, to be fair, a lot of leadership trainings in corporate have some elements like this, right? But it was, again, not confining education to people don't even distinguish between the word education and academics. To most of us, it's the same thing.
Right.
Yeah.
But it is dramatically different. Academics is a subset of education. The regatta is a subset of education. What we're hoping comes out of it is this concept of personal sort of challenge, achievement, our whole lives. I am, as a parent, I've said this. My parents have said that to me. कि if you say beach जाना है, तो आपके अम्मी अब्बू कहेंगे बेटा पानी में नहीं जाना, right? So the beach for us has been at best a picnic. It's never an adventure. But life is an adventure, and it's specifically not a picnic. A lot of times, sometimes it can be. So the regatta for us, it evolved from that thought. But the first regatta was very different, just like the first House of Dreams water carnival. It's very similar. Imagine a campus changing into Sunway Lagoon, right, or Wild Wadi. It's unthinkable.
Right.
And people would say, "ये तो अगर party नहीं है तो क्या है?" And there's so much that happens running Wild Wadi is not a party. The people running Wild Wadi are running a business. They do planning, they do HR, they do finance, they do safety, they do engineering. And that's how, if you are a guest at Regatta, at the House of Dreams Water Carnival, your objectives are different, but for the students who manage it and run it, they are learning immense things about how to run a business outside. The regatta to me is a metaphor for life. Something you cobble together with your hands, and you put yourself on that, and you go out into uncharted waters, being subjected to the outcomes of decisions that you've made a long time ago. How do you design your raft? How do you construct your raft? How many people you have with you? What are they willing to commit? How hard they're willing to paddle? Right? All of those, to me, over time have come to this kind of liberating experience. And many kids say that, "Sir, I never thought I could do this. I never thought this was possible." And just like GBR, just like the HOD Water Carnival, the regatta is designed to help students believe in what most people might think either unnecessary or foolish or impossible. And Nixer is about that, just challenging boundaries. Why do we do it? Going back to GBR, there was no data that suggested it can't be done. Right? How did I get the data? The first people to build a boat was me, Miss Megan, and my 2 kids. And मुझे याद है, when we were launching that raft, it was not in December. मेरे ख्याल है September, October में होगा, बड़ी लहरें थी.
High times.
Right? The sea was rough, and I remember Miss Megan lost her glasses. Her prescription, she can't see 2 feet without her glasses. Both my kids were on there, but we all had life jackets, and it just seemed possible, right? There was no data to us. Abhi bhi aap dekhein, regatta jab hota hai, every kid has a life jacket. We have lifeguards in the water. We have the safety briefing before we leave.
Yeah.
Right? We have an emergency crew from South City Hospital, an ambulance standing outside. We have boats in the water. We have jet skis to make sure that we're safe. Does it guarantee our safety? No. Life doesn't guarantee anything.
Exactly.
Right? But if हर छोटी चीज़ से हम डर के कोई कदम ही ना लें, ना GBR होता, ना HOD वाटर कार्निवल होता, ना बच्चों के पास इस किस्म की liberated thinking आती that I can make it happen, right? So that's why the regatta.
Honestly, that's just the foundation of Nixer, in my personal opinion. Nixer corporate people think you guys are just sitting behind desks documenting, but there is so much more to it that I've seen as a volunteer, and I think Hammad would agree as well, कि हम लोग sometimes we're venturing to Sadr या कभी हम कहीं और जा रहे हैं. For regatta, we went so far to get bamboos at a cheaper rate. कि market day पे हमारे पैसे कम हैं. So I genuinely think it is an amazing experience. and I would recommend it to the upcoming A0s as well. And is there something you would want to say to the A0s about who are joining Nixer?
Look, I would say join with the understanding that you'll get out of Nixer what you're willing to put into Nixer, right? If you want a chill time, कर सकते हैं आप. You're not forced to take part in the regatta. You're not forced to take part in corporate. You don't have to go to HOD. You don't have to do GBR. आप आएं, पढ़ें, घर जाएं. Those are the mandatory things. If you don't come to school, then there are consequences.
Yeah.
But all of the other stuff, be willing to experience life, be willing to take certain risks, be willing to work 18-hour days, and still have people around you that are unhappy कि भाई आपने homework time पे नहीं किया, अम्मी कह रही हैं आप घर time पे नहीं आए, Sir Qasim कह रहे हैं आपने ये documents जमा नहीं कराए, आप कह रहे हैं मैंने सोया भी नहीं इतना. This is life.
This is the Nixer experience.
This is the Nixer experience. Right? I'm confident there is no community of educators in the world, चाहे वो O levels में हो, A levels में हो, university में हो, पाकिस्तान में हो, दुनिया में कहीं भी हो, that will give you this kind of a platform to discover how strong you can be physically and mentally.
Yeah.
I agree. मुझे मेरे दोस्त भी यही कह रहे थे कि यार we are enjoying जून जुलाई की छुट्टियाँ and तुम्हारा corporate है 10 to 5, you're just wasting time. I'm not wasting time. मतलब एक जो मैंने university की बात करना है, I can do that now.
Yeah.
It is a head start for me. ठीक है ना?
And look, it is difficult to see the growth that you guys are undergoing because everybody around you, your friends generally, a lot of you are doing similar things. So in relative terms, आपको भी growth नजर नहीं आएगी.
Right.
But when you leave the Nixer, what is it, a cocoon? I hope not. But just this place,
Community.
you will start to see how you think is different, how you plan is different, how you don't get rattled by changes is different. ये आपको बाद में समझ when you compare, not consciously but subconsciously होते हैं ये comparisons. When people see Nixer students and alums, so many interviewers have told me कि एक समझ आ जाती है कि ये Nixer का student है. So it is happening. I am so confident you're not wasting time. You're investing in yourself, and probably the biggest thing, I don't think I could describe Nixer or Civitas, O levels, A levels, primary, without calling it a community that believes in social impact. Right? A2s respect the opportunity to be part of this community, step up and do the right thing, and I won't need to have advice for A0s. They will learn from you.
Yeah, right.
Yep.
I think that's it. And
that is
it was
the end of it.
a wonderful experience talking to you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you for
Thank you so
inviting
much
me
for
and asking
being here,
me,
sir.
Thought-provoking questions, and I hope you do amazing things with your life.
Inshallah, sir.
Inshallah.
Take care, guys.
Thank you for taking our time.